Located in Hammondsport, New York, Ravines Wine Cellars is quickly becoming one of the most recognized and awarded wineries in the Finger Lakes. In this segment, Morten and Lisa Hallgren, the owners of Ravines, take us through the history of the winery, explain why the Finger Lakes provide for an excellent expression of New World wine, and take us through a tasting of several of their delectable and food-friendly wines.
Currently, we source all of our grapes locally here in the Finger Lakes, and through years of experience of making wine here from many, many different vineyard sites, I had a chance to essentially cherry pick and select the vineyards where a combination of the site and the skills of the vineyard manager produced the types of grape that really worked for our kind of wine. So it's fundamentally different from the old world where most everybody works with estate-grown grapes. Here, rather than decree that the grapes coming off our own farm are necessarily the best, because there is a strong attachment to your land and to your own grapes, we look at it more objectively and set out to seek the better grapes grown around the area for our style of wine, such as the Riesling with the more floral, the mineral characteristics. I think if you look at it fundamentally, that is the difference between the old world and the new world. This need to, over years, find out what constitutes our terroir, but in the meantime, be open and honest enough to understand that you need to go through many, many cycles of replanting your vineyards before you can say with certainty that on any particular piece of land you have found the right combination of grape variety and rootstock.
What's the variety that you produce every year, or is it different year to year?
I would say the more important grape variety for us would be Riesling and Chardonnay on the white side, and on the red side, Pinot Noir, Cabernet Franc, as well as our Meritage blend, which is a Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc Merlot blend. These are very important wines to us, to go along with the Pinot Noir Rosé, which is a traditional rosé wine.
Now tell me a little bit about what we're going to be tasting right now.
So this is our vineyard designate Riesling from St. Marketinger's vineyard over on Keuka Lake. And it's sort of a unique vineyard in that it's on a gravelly site with a limestone subbase, so it gives a really unique focus and character that I really love to make a dry Riesling from. You just get an aromatic intensity and a purity of aroma there, which is extremely rare, which is why I chose to leave it completely dry and find other ways to soften up the wine, like the traditional lees stirring that people use in France in cooler climates. So it is sort of a unique site, and that's the beauty of a new wine region. We can go out and discover all these new sites.
All right, so we taste.
It's a unique expression of Riesling here in the Finger Lakes because most people are striving for this sweeter, more very fruity Riesling. Well, this is all about minerality, delicate floral aromatics.
Yeah, this is very different from what I think a lot of people probably expect a Riesling would be like.
Well, we have a lot of people that come and say they don't want to taste the Riesling because they don't like sweet wines. And then I always encourage them to taste our Riesling. And that's the amazing thing about Riesling. There's so many different styles.
Well, we introduced a new style of Riesling that really wasn't here before. We sort of expanded the dry Riesling category downwards very significantly. They all tended to be a little bit on the sweeter side, which is sort of why we developed that reputation as a region. But I think the American public as a whole is turning towards the dry wines because there's such an amazing interest in food. So I think that's where the interest is, and it fits in with what I learned to make, so it's kind of a nice match.
How important is food in developing the wines that you want to create?
Being in a cool climate, the natural balance of our wines lends itself really well to food pairings. We have moderate alcohol, we have a nice pronounced acidic backbone, we have delicate floral and mineral elements, and the last thing you really want to do is to cover them up with sugar, because then you lose all of the focus and the elegance and the balance of the wine. We choose to make it in a style where you get these aromas without this complication of the sugar.
So now we are in your beautiful tasting room and are about to taste the 2010 Pinot Rosé, right?
Absolutely. Rosé is a very important wine for us. It's sort of what I grew up, and we both grew up with in the south of France, which is known primarily for its dry rosé wine. So it's a wine that's very dear to us, and we really appreciate the recent interest in the United States for rosé wine, and we see great potential for that wine in our area.
It's made with Champagne clones, a Pinot, rather than Dijon clones, which tend to be more floral, a little bit lighter, more delicate. So you get some really beautiful, delicate aromatics, more flowers and softer fruit.
Yeah, it's even changed as we've been swirling and tasting for the last few minutes. Is there, as people come in and buy the different wines, do you find that there's a certain type of person who gravitates toward the rosé, or is it pretty much a cross section?
Definitely younger people. I think they're too young maybe to remember all of the really terrible, dry, sweet rosés.
Yeah.
But this is made in a very specific way. It's its own method, the Saignée method, which Morten can tell you a little bit about.
The Saignée method.
Well, Saignée is basically French for bleeding. So what you do, you essentially leave the juice in contact with the grape skin, so it picks up color and aromatics from the grape skins. And after the skin contact time, which is of the order 1 to 2, maybe sometimes 3 days, you separate the juice out, and the juice ferments on its own like a white wine. So you get the beautiful color and the aromatics from the skins, and you ferment it on its own, so you get the kind of lightness and the crispness of a white wine. So, whereas the common perception is that it's a blend of red wine or rosé wine, it's essentially a combination of the winemaking methods. So this is our Meritage blend, which is a blend of Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, and Merlot. There seems to be this common misconception that red Bordeaux wines were built entirely on power. You hear muscular, tannic, Munster this and Munster that. And nothing could be further from the truth. It is an amazingly delicate balancing act between all the different components of the wine, really making something very age-worthy but beautifully balanced. And I would argue that in the Finger Lakes, we're one of those rare regions where we can do that. And I can draw experiences from some time I've spent in the Bordeaux region.
I'm sure. Are there many winemakers here that are making this type of wine?
Very few. It takes good nerves, because very often we don't bring the last grapes into the very end of October, even a week, 10 days into November. You go right down to the wire of the growing season. This is sort of a reminder of what great Bordeaux wine. This is not Bordeaux wine, but the style of wine that they use to make there, and I think it's very fitting to do that in the Finger Lakes.
It's lovely. It's fruity, but it's not overpowering, and it's really, like you said, it is really delicate.
Right.
And I can imagine that this might even be something that would go well with a chocolate. And I know that you recently opened a chocolate room. What makes chocolate such a good pairing with your wines and the Meritage in particular?
Well, we work with some artisan chocolates in Rochester called Hedonist Artisan Chocolates, and the flavors that they put together are more savory and kind of remind you of different foods. And so we thought they're a perfect pairing with our wine because they're not sweet. For the most part, they're not sweet. And they have some really interesting flavors that is always fun to pair with different wines. For instance, this little truffle here is made with local black currants from our little farm in Penyan, and it's nice and savory. So it goes really nicely with our Meritage, we feel.
Well, Morten and Lisa, thank you so much for having us in today. This was wonderful. Your wines were spectacular, and we hope that we can come back soon. And until then, we will be looking for your wines in Boston, because I know that you also have them there.
Yes, you're always welcome.